Hello and welcome, and in today's video I'm going to be showing you the top 10 most insane Ark tames because I just love them so much. So in at the number 10 spot I've decided to put the Astradelphus, as I find this is just a really effective traveller to get around the map, and I really do like it for all of its element of speed. It really does have a lot going for it in that aspect. As you know, a creature like this and a Tropical Ignatus, that's another creature which I quite like, following the similar niche to this creature, because they both travel with insane speed. But I just prefer the Astradelphus just from an ability perspective, and getting element is so easy on a map like Gen 2. It really isn't that expensive to do, and I just love the creature. And I also find the tame methods a little bit simpler as well. I know it's not the easiest out there, but I don't really like to chain bowler the Tropical Ignatus. It's just a little bit of a pain in my opinion what you sort of have to do. I think you have to cast bolt at it. It's not as simple just trank out, so in that regard I do prefer the tame methods of the Astradelphus, which is usually why I go for it instead. Yeah, saddles unlocked at a later level and technically it runs on more expensive things, but I find it attacks very effectively and it travels at the speed of just insane speeds, really. Coming up next on the list, we have got the Raasclark, and I really do love this as a creature. It just has so much capability when it comes to everything. It can pick up a huge variety of mounts that you'll find across the map, from Rexes to Paraceratheriums and creatures like that. It's honestly insane what this can do in that department. You really wouldn't expect it, especially from a creature of this size, because there are some bigger flyers out there that still can't carry as much as this thing. Although maybe not my favorite tame, as it seems a little bit unbalanced in my opinion, I still really do love this thing, and it is, although an insane one, maybe not quite the one for me, which is why it's only going higher on the list. But I still really do like this creature. I don't want to be like, oh well, I don't really like this creature at all, because that just simply wouldn't be the truth. I really like this creature for all the elements that it offers, especially in its traveling capabilities. Its weight is great, its damage dealing is great too, and I really do attribute it for that. It does a very great job of it, and generally it is just a great mount to have around, and the tame method isn't too difficult. Coming up next, I've decided to put the Theory, as this really is the most insane fiber gatherer out there for me. I love the fiber gathering that this creature offers, and of course its saddle was unlocked at level 69.
Nice.
On top of all of that too, it is a great combat mount, and it doesn't just gather fiber as well. It is great at wood and thatch, and also any kind of natural material that you'd find of creatures like chitin, keratin, hide, and any sort of meat, as it can actually gather those, which can't be said about quite a lot of herbivores in the game. Obviously the moss chops is a great shout as well, but I feel like this is an upgraded one, although the organic poly farming isn't quite as good as on one of those. But I really do like this creature, especially if you're going for the dragon on the island as well. Strongly recommend these things, as the dragon has a particular disadvantage to herbivores, as it deals a lot of damage to carnivores with its fire breath attack, but not to those herbivores out there. In at number 7, I simply have to put the Crystal Wyvern, as I really do find this a very effective mount, and especially considering how easy it is to get this thing, at least for me, I really do think it deserves a spot. Yes, it is behind a level 60 cap, and you do need to knock out one of these Crystal Wyverns to get the Primal Crystal, but with a net gun it is ridiculously simple, and with a note run that level 60 is no problem whatsoever, unless you're playing on official, but I'm not one of those official players, and I think most people out there aren't really playing on official. Still like a little bit of a grind, probably about 2.5x is as high as I'll really go, which is basically just default single player settings. It really is not too difficult to get this tame, and you get that full Wyvern experience with, in my opinion, better elemental abilities, which is why I really like this as an Ark creature. I find the Blood Crystal Wyvern is a favourite of mine. That ability that it has is just so much nicer than any fire breath or lightning breath or poison or ice or anything like that. And I've also heard the embers are quite popular among loads of you in the comments below as well, and that is a very splendid one too. Of course, this is a tropical one here because it sort of looks the most crystally. I think it's the nicest for the B-roll. Coming in next, we have got the Bloodstalker, and this is my all-time favorite underwater travel mount. I really haven't found anything better to do this same job. I just find it does just such a good job for what it is in terms of underwater travel. It is my favourite out there, and of course it is just a great travel mount all round too. But why is it so good underwater? Well, firstly, it can skate along the top of that, which is really just going to benefit it generally if it's trying to get out of some very sticky and dangerous situations. You can see all the aggros of the creatures, very nice in a not very visible environment such as the deep ocean, because really you can't really see down there at all. If you also have the scuba mask on, that kind of limits your field of view more than you'd probably want. And they actually deal a pretty reasonable amount of damage and are very mobile and sort of acrobatic in a way in the water. Same as on land too, I find they really do work effectively for land travel as well. That is sort of what they're more designed to do, but they definitely were designed with the underwater biome in mind, as it's the only real travel mount out there on Genesis Part 1, so considering there was an ocean biome on it, it really was made for all of those maps, and that's why it's such a good underwater traveller. In at number 5, I've decided to put the Baryonyx, as I really do find this an effective caving mount, and it's insane how easily you can get this creature, and also just generally how early on. I really have no idea when the saddle is actually unlocked for this thing, but I'm confident pre-level like 50 or at least pre-level 60 definitely for sure. With a note run you can easily get up to the level of this thing in, you know, a matter of like maybe half an hour even, or less than that. Note runs are really OP. And then you can head to the swamp biome. I've heard on ASA you can also just head to any rivers because the spawns are a little bit bugged. I don't know if that's intentional or not on the island, and you can find them there, but I would go for the swamp biome just as a general. And if you can find one on the outskirts too that's a high level, that is really going to benefit you. And if you can find one just in a random river somewhere, that is also generally just going to benefit you. They're great cavers because of their size and the fact that they are very mobile. They can jump around and they can deal quite a heck of a lot of damage, and their health is obviously good enough to withstand all of the creatures that you'll find in the cave. They're also great as an underwater caving mount too, due to their great swimming abilities and that stun attack, which they of course have, which can stun creatures up to the size of a megalodon. Honestly, great tames, and if you haven't tamed one already, it's a must-have. Coming in next, we have got the Reaper, and really, would it be a list like this? Sorry, I don't know why I'm confused with that word for a second. Without the Reaper actually being on here, the king of Ab. There really is little better than it in terms of integrating itself into a map so well, and just with such a crazy cool design that I think we all really do know and love. It is stood the test of time for sure, and I'm still using these things quite frequently, even on maps that aren't Ab, because they are just insane killers of so many things. It's like the Giga on steroids essentially. The Crocodile is a great shout too, but I'm still really enjoying this thing, and I have been really enjoying this thing ever since it came out. I've only really tamed it on Ab as well, although I have done a bit on Gen 2 if I want to just get one quickly, and also if I want an Ark Reaper, then I'll use that Raasclark method that he has. It's a really great video if you haven't checked it out already, and if you want a Reaper easily, I would recommend that. But if you never tamed one before, go on Ab and tame one the original way, like we always do it back in the day. It is far more rewarding in my opinion, and then once you get one you feel like the absolute king of the world. Their model design is insane. They're basically just a xenomorph from Aliens, and yeah, they are really, really cool. In number 3, I simply have to put the RG, as this is just such an effective mount for all things metal gathering. And although it's maybe sort of seems a little bit weird to put it above the Reaper, but honestly this creature has done a lot for me, and it is insane. Again, just this creature is so great. Its saddle was unlocked in the mid 60s. I don't think it's quite that perfect 69, it might be like 68 or something, just out of that perfect range of course. And they are great flyers and great resource transporters, you could say. With their insane weight reduction on metal, crystal, and obsidian, it's 50% at least. I'm pretty sure it's 50%, but I might have to check on that. But again, confident with that. They can pick up a wealth of creatures too. With an Anki and a Dodix, you really can farm like any resource that a pick or hatchet could farm. It's sort of insane really what you can get out of the use case of these things. They can also pick a secondary creature up in their beak. Their saddle acts as portable smithy, so if you've gone caving and an arse race, maybe broken your armor, as long as you've got some metal in the saddle of this thing, you can repair your armor and go to the next cave, and you don't even have to go back to your base. At least that's what I do when I do caving. That's just the thing I do, I guess. The regen buff, which they also have, always does come in handy in my opinion. If you are too low, then you could simply kill something like a dodo or a listro, and boom, you eat that thing and you get so much regen. It is honestly a godsend. In at number 2, we have got the Maywing. This is really my favourite traveller out there, and honestly insane that its saddle is unlocked at level 18. You really can't find anything better than this at the level that you're getting it at, and really just better than it in general across the whole game, which really does home in the fact that the saddle was unlocked at level 18. It's insane. I would get to a level of where you can get some signs and obviously trank arrows, which is level 21 for those, so be about level 21. I'm not sure actually when these signs are unlocked, but either way, getting there is very simple, and the taming method is very simple. Use a couple of signs, I think like 3 should suffice to trap it in an area and it won't be able to fly out of them, and trank it out, as long as you build the trap right of course, otherwise it will be able to get out of it. So make sure they're reasonably close together and that it can't walk out of that area. You're going to have to act quite quickly as well, but it really isn't too difficult, at least from what I found. And then you've got yourself a Maywing like that, boom. You can even start with a really high level, they don't take too many turns to knock out. You've got yourself the best, like fastest pretty much travel mount in the game. They also act as a portable feeding trough, they can gather berries too, and are reasonable swimmers as well, so they really do have a lot going for them. Insane their saddle was unlocked at level 18, it's honestly amazing. And in number 1, we've got the Deinonychus. This really does have to top my list. I can't really think of anything that is more insane than this creature, just for all of my general needs. While yes, maybe it doesn't fulfill those underwater needs, the Shadowmane would be a good shout there. I'll give it a brief honorable mention. Don't want any comments about I didn't include the Shadowmane on the list. It gets an honorable mention here, okay? Maybe it should have been on the list in my opinion, in a way, but you know, it's being left out because I think all these creatures are more valuable to me, at least at the moment. The Deinonychus though really is a king when it comes to boss fights, able to deal bleed damage to them as well by just grappling onto them, like you can see I'm doing to that Bronto there, and just absolutely shredding them. Especially considering they have the pack buff on top of this too, there really is nothing which can go wrong. The boss fights will take barely any time whatsoever, unless there's a certain mini game to it, like the Gen 1 boss fights, which might not be the best fight to bring these things in, as their health can sometimes be not the best for the longer fights. But as long as you have some health mutations on these things, I think you should be fine, and I've done it with Dines before, so it is definitely very possible. That is on Alpha as well, I should specify, not just the puny Gamma fight, but all the way up to the Alpha. I did all of them. I've also done the Gamma fight with Carnos as well, but I find they don't really work as well when you get up into the higher tiers of that boss. You're not going to be using these things for the Moda, but that's just generally obvious, isn't it? They're great parkour gods too, and they take no fall damage. How you tame one, you go to the Chalk Cliffs biome and you steal an egg out of a Dine nest, and then boom, you've got yourself that Dine baby. Once you hatched it, then you're going to raise it. If you get a good breeding pair, you're all set. The top 10 most fun Ark tames. In at number 10, we've got the Carcharodontosaurus, and the reason why I've put this creature here, as personally, I really do find it fun to just go and ride around on one of these things, and then obviously you can just absolutely decimate tons and tons of creatures across the map. It really does just make for a very fun experience with a creature like this. If you can absolutely dominate the space across a map and just like kill everything in your sight, there is something inherently fun about that. The Giga kind of does do the same, but I find its mobility does lack quite a lot, and that kind of stops the fun compared to this creature, whereas you can just go for ages with this thing and you don't really run out of stamina, and the damage just keeps getting higher until that blood rage is full. So there's just a lot of element of fun just with you essentially feeling like you're on top of the world, like you're the strongest creature out there when you're on this thing. Obviously you're not, but still there's just so much fun in even taming these things, and also just for general use as well after you've obviously tame them. The taming process, I find, if it glitches it can be very infuriating, but if it actually does go smoothly, it's quite a fun and enjoyable one, especially if you got a few friends along the way. And sometimes if it bugs and you got a few friends along the way, it still does provide for fun experiences. You can just laugh about how the game is failing a lot, and you know, Ark players do like to do that a lot. But yeah, that's why I say the Crocodinosaurus is a very fun tame. Next up, we've got the Manigama, and this creature is here as you can absolutely zoom across the map with this thing, and also just as a general mount, just for traveling around on, they are really successful in the fun department. I find these creatures are just insane to zoom around with. Their mobility really does make them very fun creatures, and although their tame method doesn't really have anything to do with the funness scale, we'll call it for the purpose of this video, I find as long as it does go smoothly, it can be a reasonably enjoyable one to do, because it's not just the standard knockout tame. There is some sense of variety within it, which, you know, it makes these things slightly more interesting, you could say, to get around, which I think does hugely benefit these creatures on this list. And obviously the main reason why they're here is because of that insane speed. Having these creatures travel at such a rate really does make them insanely fun for me. And you know, as a player that doesn't usually tend to just go around with creatures like this, whenever I do hop on one, it really is sort of a breath of fresh air in a way, because I always love coming back to these creatures and using them. I really should use them even more, but they have been obviously nerfed since release, so they're not quite as good as they used to be, but it's still nice to have that speed and agility. It really does add a huge element of fun to these things. Next up, we have got the Astrodelphis, and this creature is here because, like, come on, it's got such an insane speed. And I promise not all the creatures on this list are just simply here because of an insane amount of speed, because, you know, although fast creatures are definitely really fun, maybe the funnest creature out there on the funness scale is not necessarily the fastest one. But for the case of the Astrodelphis, and also I'm going to say the Tropiognathus, it really does help significantly that they are fast. They would be less fun if they weren't, especially considering all the agility that they can do, and they can do it at such a speed. It's so fun and also just enjoyable to do. You really do love these creatures just for all of their insane mobility skills, and that's kind of what makes them really fun. The same goes for the Tropiognathus, and also with their immense amount of weaponry on top of it as well. It adds even more on top of it. They're just so packed with useful, nice abilities, and they're just well designed, very mobile creatures that really do go quite a long way for giving you a better playing experience. It really does have something to be said that these are some fun creatures. And yes, I'm putting two in at this spot because I was being a bit indecisive, but mainly the Astrodelphis, but obviously the Tropiognathus does fit into a very similar category of creature, so I decided to put it here as well. Next up, in at number 7, we have got the Rhinogonatha, and this creature is simply here because, like, come on, who doesn't love to ride around on this giant insect thing? And although it's a little bit too OP for my liking, it definitely is a hugely enjoyable creature to ride around on and use generally across any map. Obviously they only spawn on the island and Lost Island in the swamp areas, but still you can transfer them to other maps, and they're useful in a lot of other scenarios. Obviously they're great for just doing general PvP raiding, but they're just great as general travel mounts as well. They can pick up tons of creatures too, so if you want to get to some bosses fast, instead of herding all your Rexes up to the volcano, you can always use a Rhinogonatha. If that's something that you want to do, you can obviously just use cryos and stuff like that as well, but you know, if you want to do it that way, you can. Also, if you just want to take some creatures across the map, or if you don't have access to the cryos at the moment, you can always just take a creature back with it, although you probably would at the time that you tame this thing, unless you've been gifted one by like a server admin or something like that. Rare scenarios, but you know, maybe sometimes it would happen. Their tame method is pretty much the same as the Reaper, it's just been ripped off of it. Obviously it doesn't really count as a rip-off because it's made by the same people, but still, you know, I felt they could have been a little bit more inventive with the tame method, but it definitely still is an enjoyable one because I really do like the tame method of the Reaper, and you know, it's a very nice one to do. I don't really like the fact that now you need to use loads of materials instead of gathering XP. I prefer the Reaper's tame method in that regard, but apart from that, really fun and enjoyable tame method. I know you don't really factor that in usually, but I find the tame method is quite fun as well. It really does make me want to tame the creature more, and then once I've tamed it, if it's still fun, it really does just elevate it on this list, I'm just going to say, and it definitely really does deserve to be up here. It can demolish tons of creatures, it's fast, it can pick up tons of things, and it's such a great flyer for all kinds of things, and for that it really does deserve to be on this list, because it can't be demoted for its insane amount of skill and power, and also just the amount of thought and design that's gone into this creature from Wildcard. It really does just make it an even better one and nicer one to use. And obviously, sadly, you're going to lose yourself a creature, but I think it's all worth it to get yourself a Rhino Ganatha. Next up, we have got ourselves the Velonosaur, and this creature is here because I really love shooting those spines out of this creature. I find that is just such a useful and effective ability. Like, I know it's not really the most complicated thing out there, but I really just do enjoy this creature's simplicity in a way. It makes it so much more enjoyable to me. Very easy tame, and obviously you can get those Velonosaurs on Gen 2 as well. Like, honestly, great creatures to tame. If you haven't already and you have access to them, please go tame yourself a Velonosaur. You'll not regret it. Just for general use, they're insane. You can even take them into bosses if you want to. I'm pretty sure they can go into boss fights. If not, that might just be because I have some sort of mod installed. Obviously, maybe not the best boss creature out there, but still, I do find it fun from time to time to go out on one of these creatures and do some bosses with them, but mainly for just general travel around the map. I find them to be extremely effective, and obviously that's what I use them for the most, and I really do enjoy them for that. They're truly fun creatures, especially that spine attack that I was talking about there. It adds so much depth and character to these creatures, even though they're so simple. They're so basic in their simplicity that it makes them really fun, because they're so simple. You instantly know what to do with these creatures. There's no faffing around with things. It is just boom, there you go, done. It really does make these creatures so effective in this department. In at number 5, we've got ourselves the Gigantoraptor, and I kind of feel like I have to put this creature here. I know it's still a really new one, but I've been really just enjoying it. It's a very mobile creature, and yeah, obviously you can throw eggs out to tame it as well, but I found just trapping it works just fine, and for me that makes the tame method a lot more fun, because I don't really just go into all the process of getting those eggs, and the mini game is definitely a very nice one to have, and I like how inventive that tame method is, as it's something we've never seen before. I did expect them to be a little bit larger, but obviously that doesn't really matter. But you really feel like you can do pretty much anything with these creatures. Yeah, maybe they don't deal the most damage out in the world, they still can deal a hefty amount, and you can pretty much destroy everything on the map with these things. And obviously you can carry babies with them like you could on a Maywing, and you know, there's so much use out of these creatures, and I know they're only new, but still you can get tons of great use out of these things. Next up, we have got the Bloodstalker, and I really do love these things for just general travel and underwater exploration. As just me as a person, I've always really liked the thought of an ocean, and just oceans and games always make me just generally quite excited. That's why I really liked playing through Subnautica and Raft and all of those games. They really are some of my favourites out there, and the fact that I can use the Bloodstalker to do some insane underwater exploration in Ark, it really does make it a hugely fun creature for me. And also just generally, you can just basically pretend to be Spider-Man going around the map, and obviously you do kind of get an awesome spyglass sort of effect as well, as you can see all the aggressive creatures. Just generally makes them really useful, because not everyone does have access to awesome spyglass out there, so you do essentially once you have one of these creatures. And the tame method is pretty inventive as well, especially considering they did it first. You can obviously just feed them some moss chops prior to when you actually feed them the blood bags, which is obviously in your inventory in yourself, to get yourself 100 effectiveness. It's really not that much of a challenge whatsoever. And obviously on Gen 1 you can just get some hexagons anyway, and then from that you can obviously get you can get hexagons with the Bloodstalker from the Bloodstalker race missions. That's what I meant to say. It went a bit off track of thought there. Either way, insanely great just general travel mounts, and obviously great for underwater exploration, which is the main reason why I'm putting them here. Kind of a little bit undervalued relating to my last video. That'll be at the end of this video if you do want to go watch that to do with the Bloodstalker, because I find people don't use it for that enough, and it really is great for that. And obviously you can also just grapple creatures in and kind of suck the life out of them too, and if you have blood bags on you, it can heal itself quite quickly as well. So it's useful and versatile and fun in so many ways. In at number 3, we have got the Desmodus, and this creature is here just because, like, come on, it's the Desmodus. It is this like Nordic bat. Obviously, I know it's not really Nordic in a sense, but it comes from a very Nordic map, which is why I'm obviously calling it that, although obviously it was much before the Nordic period when this thing actually did exist, if it did exist. Not to this scale though. I'm pretty sure it was actually an existing thing though. And this creature is just insanely great for PvP, and although I don't use it, I don't actually play Ark a lot in PvP, is what I meant to say. Whenever I do, it's really fun to just pick players off mounts with these things. Really useful ability. Also, that gliding ability, general speed, makes them really nice. Just as a general fast traveling mount, it really does just make these creatures even more fun to me. And obviously, with Sanguine Elixir, taming creatures becomes an absolute breeze, and you know, that makes these things even more fun for me to use. It's just pretty much in endless versatility with things that you can do with these creatures, and I really do love them for that, and I get so much fun out of many uses with this creature. Next up, we have got the Reaper, and obviously I had to put this creature here. Come on, look at this thing. Like, this is that ultimate Ark creature capable of just so much stuff in the fun department. Its tame method is insane to get through. Like, I love taming these things. Again, I did say it with the Rhinogonatha, but I find it is an even better taming method than that. And also, I find they're just more fun creatures to use. They fit into the map so much better than something like the Rhinogonatha, and I felt like more thought and design was been put into them. And although, yes, maybe people would prefer to have that other tail ability, which does still torpor to creatures, which the Reaper Queen does, instead of just the one that slows down enemy creatures. That's the only one real downside I can think of the Reaper. They still are so fun to ride around on, as you just feel like you can decimate everything in the map. They can just deal tons of damage, and they're pretty agile in the mobility aspect too. They can even bury themselves underground. There's like pretty much endless uses for these creatures, and I really do love them for that. There's so much you can do with a Reaper, especially if you tame a good one and you put all the effort in it. There's like no better feeling than really getting to that stage and getting that successful Reaper tame. It really does it always works out for you mentally. You really do feel so proud of yourself when you tame one of these things, and it is a hugely fun experience once you've done it right. And finally, in at number 1, we have got ourselves the Deinonychus, and I feel like this creature really does have to be here, as it deserves to be on this list, as it's so versatile in so many ways. Such a great fun boss creature once you've got a big pack of these things. There is no better feeling than driving these things straight into tons of creatures which are really difficult to kill, and absolutely decimating them with tons of blood flying everywhere, because of obviously that bleed ability, just grappling into creatures and ripping them to shreds. It really is just hugely satisfying, and no other creature really gives me the same kick as these creatures do. I know loads of people get the same kind of kick out of something like a Shadowmane, but I vastly prefer the Deinonychus. The tame method, although not the most inventive, is actually just a pretty nice one. I like how it's just the Wyvern's tame method, but a little bit modified. It's a lot easier than taming a Wyvern as well, especially if you're taming Wyverns on Scorched Earth, and obviously then you can just assemble a huge pack of these things and decimate loads of things across the map. They also do have insane amounts of speed as well, again making these creatures even more fun, because with more speed it is better on obviously that funness scale. These things also don't take full damage, so there's no kind of loss of immersion in a sense of where you can just kind of do what you want, and you're just so immersed in this creature that you have no care in the world for what's about to come up next. And obviously they can park up walls as well. Nothing really can stand in your way in terms of terrain, obviously, unless it's just lava, but no creature really can go through that unless you're obviously on a Magmasaur, but that creature's not on this list because, you know, in my opinion, that's still a good creature, but it does not compare to the Deinonychus, which is in at the number 1 spot. But anyway, that is the end of today's video, and I really hope that you all enjoyed, as I definitely did enjoy making this one. As always, comment down below what is the most fun Ark tame to you. If you didn't agree with this list, also put your 10 most fun Ark creatures in the comments below, and I'll see you all later.